Hello, everyone. Welcome to What Do You Believe? We're happy and excited that you're watching, and we're happy that we have you here, Michael,
Thanks, David.
to share your thoughts, your ideas, and your questions.
Mhm.
We're also happy to have you, Dr. Nagy Eskandar.
Thank you.
Dr. Nagy is a medical doctor, and he's the fellow of the Royal College of Surgeons of England, and he practiced surgery for 25 years. He also wrote a book, Creation Under the Microscope, and he presented many TV programs in Arabic, like Christian and Creation Answers, The Beginnings. You created me a human being and question mark. Welcome, doctor.
Thank you, David. I'm delighted to be here.
We've been talking for a while now about a lot of different subjects, but mainly biology.
Yes.
There is the intermediates. There is the like a lot of like evolution thoughts and a lot of creation thoughts.
Yes.
But it was mainly in biology.
Exactly.
Now we want to move into geology.
Exactly. Yes. So as we can see on the screen, the evolution is really in biology and then geology and then astronomy or cosmology. So we have covered lots of subjects, as you said, about biology and natural selection and mutation and all of these issues. And now we'd like to progress with the geology. I'd like you to see the geologic time scale or geological column, which is very famous. And we have different zones and millions of years in each one. And this is actually the millions of years were estimated even before the radiometric dating, before using carbon-14 and potassium argon and all the other radiometric dating. Radiometric dating happened in the 90s, in 1930 to 1950. But the geological column was about a couple of hundred years before that. So these are estimates which was made of these millions of years based on uniformitarian thinking. Uniformitarian thinking, as we discussed before, is by Charles Lyell, who said all the changes that we see now from deposition and erosion of mountains, for example, are constant. So if it is a slow process now, you expect it to be slow process in the past, so you need millions of years. We Christians believe in catastrophic geology, and that's the catastrophe of the flood of Noah, which really changed that very quickly. We'll discuss that more and more. So we believe in the flood deposits that happened within the year of the flood. The flood lasted for 371 days, and the fountains of the deep were open. The rain came in, and all the crust of the earth was broken because we were one continent initially, and then divided according to the tectonic plates. So we believe, obviously, there was some deposits before the flood, because since death entered the world as a result of disobedience of Adam and Eve, there is death and fossilization. And we have the main deposits during the flood, and then we have the post-flood deposits. And that's covering the about 4,000 years of history in this area. Now, we don't agree about the timing of the geological column. We agree about the geological column. There are layers and there are specific deposits in each layer and specific fossils in each layer. So we agree, obviously, about the geological column, but we have question mark about the millions of years. Let me just remind you of the uniformitarian naturalism that we discussed before. So they believe that nature is all what exists. There is no creator, it is only matter. Number two, everything must be explained by three things. By time, give me millions of years. By chance, random mutation and chance, and laws of nature acting on the matter. The third component of this thinking is processes of geological change have always been operating at the past at the same rate, frequency, and power as today. That's a big assumption, really, because that excludes something like tsunami that happens in Southeast Asia recently and moved islands within days, within hours. So it depends on the force, and we believe the forces of the flood was massive and very strong that caused geological effects that we can see nowadays. So we'll see that the past is the key to the present. So the history that happened in the past helps us to understand the nature as we see it now in the present. The uniformitarian believe that the present, the rates of change at present, is the key to the past, to explain what happened in the past. So that's the difference of the way of thinking. That's why we have different conclusions on all the events that we can see. Now, when we get a specimen, a fossil. As we can see on the screen, it doesn't come with a ticket saying I'm 65 million years old. We have to make assessment, we have to make assumptions, we have to compare it to the area where it was found, we have to run some tests on it to start to estimate its age. So let me show you a little clip explaining this idea, the fossilization.
I grew up fascinated by dinosaurs, watching movies, collecting models, reading all about them. Dinosaurs were big, they were magnificent, they were awesome. I was taught that dinosaurs once ruled the world, but that millions of years ago, they disappeared from the earth. Everything I believed about the age of the earth, the cycles of life and death, the evolution of humankind began with dinosaurs. And then I learned that the Bible presented a very different history. Kim here is my colleague, fellow paleontologist. We've been friends since college. Today we study the same fossils, we use the same techniques, but that doesn't mean we agree on what happened here. We do interpret our findings differently. You see, fossils don't come with tags on them, telling us how old they are, where they lived, what they ate, or even how they died. We have to figure that out from the clues that we find. We never have enough clues. So, our starting points usually lead us to different conclusions.
Here's how I see it. I think this dinosaur died over 100 million years ago. It dried out in the sun for a long time, and later I think the specimen was covered by river sediment, which was caused by a local flood. She's been lying here all this time till we dug her up.
Where Kim sees millions of years, I see evidence of a different history. I believe this animal died in a flood, but it wasn't a local flood. It was a massive flood that covered the earth, Noah's flood, when God judged the world. The carcass was buried suddenly, before it could be eaten or decomposed, buried in a layer of sediment that stretches across the entire continent. Since the flood, according to the Bible, was about 4,300 years ago, that's how old I believe this fossil to be. We come to different conclusions because of our different starting points. I start with the Bible, my colleague does not. We all have the same facts. We merely interpret the facts differently because of our different starting points.
You see the importance of the starting point? We have the same fossil of a dinosaur, but one will see it as millions of years, and that means it dried up quickly and separated from oxygen, because if it doesn't, that means it will decay. And then he said there was a local flood bringing all the elements, the calcium and other salts that's needed to fossilize this specimen, and he sees that as millions of years of a process. But the other paleontologist examined the same specimen and come with a different conclusion, because he believes in the universal flood that the Bible describes at Noah's time. And in this flood, there was a big amount of salts and minerals and temperature and pressure that caused this material, these bones, to get fossilized quickly. So we have the same facts, but we interpret them differently depending on our starting point.
So these are two scientists. They work in the same field, the same time, the same everything, the same
Exactly.
circumstances. They're just looking from different perspective at the same thing and getting to a different assumption or result.
Exactly. And we have to test which one is right. They are using the same methods in the lab, exactly the same methods, but the starting point affects the length of time that they assess this specimen or this fossil might be.
And again, because it's a huge difference between millions of years and thousands of years.
Exactly.
There's the assumption is completely different, not like close enough, or
Exactly.
we can both agree it's completely
It's
different.
not an approximation. We can come to a middle ground here because there is a big difference depending on our starting point.
Here I have some questions.
Sure.
Although there's difference between interpretation, the scholar are not all the scholars are agree was the flood universal or local, because according to the Bible's story, the people were concentrated in only one area, probably the Middle East.
Right.
But I don't want to talk about that.
Right.
I want to talk about if we believe that since the Bible mentioned the flood, therefore the Bible was right because there was flood.
Yeah.
In the Mesopotamian,
Yes,
in the Mesopotamian culture, in the Epic of Gilgamesh,
Yes.
there was flood.
Yes.
That was 2,100 years ago,
Yeah.
at or around. While Moses wrote the Genesis 15,000 years ago,
Yeah.
means there was 600 years different.
Right.
So that means that their religion was right. Let me tell you something. In another civilization, the Greek civilization, they had the flood.
Yes.
According to an author, according to, I don't remember
I
the
believe
author,
there is-
but
yeah.
they have
Yeah.
also the ancient Egyptians.
Yes.
They had the flood.
It is in 200 civilizations, by the way. So
Southern
to make-
America,
to
a
make-
civilization
we agree.
separated away
Exactly.
from the Greek.
Absolutely. I will discuss that in
Okay,
detail,
so
definitely.
yeah, so that does mean all those civilizations are right, or
Yeah.
are those oldest religion?
No. Let me just explain something. I'll use Gilgamesh because that's the most common. Right. There were 12 stones from Gilgamesh civilization from the Sumerians, and 11 of them can be read, and it's written in poems. They describe the flood as lasting for 1 week, and they describe the ark as a cube. And there was the Korean study in 1992. They put the dimensions of the flood, of the ark mentioned in the Bible, 300 cubit by 50 by 30, compared to the cube. And I will show a little film explaining that the cube will not be stable, and all the people inside it and all the animals will die as a result of instability. But the dimensions of the flood mentioned, the ark mentioned in the Bible, is the one which is stable and can last the forces of the flood. So I'll come in detail to all the different civilizations, and there are more information to address your question.
Okay, before you come to details, I just want you to put in
If you
consideration.
guys don't mind, we'll take a short break and
Wow.
come back. Cause
As short as that? Okay.
it goes by really fast. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Thank you for tuning in. If you have any questions or comments, or if you'd like a copy of this episode, please call 714-709-4300 or email us at info@alkarmatv.com. You can also visit our website at www.alkarmatv.com. Also, you can write to P.O. Box 3610, Seal Beach, California 90740.
Welcome back to What Do You Believe in? Michael, you had a question before we go on break.
Yeah. So the flood, innocent itself, it has been mentioned in too many religions before Moses, even before Abraham has came by. This is my first concern. My second concern about the ark that has been found. It's really well known that the ark in the Bible, in Genesis, is like the stable or the a constant ark that has been made in those times. So you can find hundreds and thousands of these
No, I'm not saying
dimensions.
we found the ark. No, we didn't find the ark, by the way.
Okay.
No,
All
I'm
right.
talking about the dimensions of the ark that's mentioned in the Bible. We'll test it on a computer model. And we didn't find the ark of the Gilgamesh. So what I'm trying to say here is, I'll explain to you why we have the flood story in all the civilization that's happened from Tower of Babel, and they got the right story from the descendants of Adam, Noah, and his descendants.
Right.
And then when they spread, they changed the culture. I'll address that in detail. Let me just finish this bit,
Okay.
and I'll address that in full
right.
detail. Okay? Good. Right. Now, fossilization. Does fossilization needs millions of years, or can it happen in a shorter time? That's a very scientific question we need to address, and we'll ask the experts to give us guidance in answering this question. It actually doesn't depend on the length of time. It depends on the circumstances that this fossil found itself in. It has to be cut from oxygen, otherwise it will decay. So it has to be a rapid process. Number two, you must have enough salt and minerals and enough pressure and temperature. So let me just put this slide in front of all of us. And this is by Philip Khair, and he is a scientist. So this publication in 1996, and he said this: fossilization is a process that can take anything from few hours to millions of years. So that's the science of it. It can take few hours to millions of years. And then he said, the amount of time that it takes for a bone to become completely mineralized is highly variable. If the groundwater is heavily laden with minerals in solution, the process can happen rapidly. Modern bones that fall into mineral springs can become pre-mineralized within a matter of weeks. So that is the science of fossilization. It doesn't depend on time, it depends on the circumstances. If there is enough minerals and enough pressure and temperature, the length of fossilization can happen within hours, as he said, within weeks. So really depends on the circumstances. And when we understand the geology of the flood, which I'll explain completely, and we will compare it to other cultures, as you mentioned, Mike, and we will see how this flood is universal, if there's evidence universal from geology, and we'll discover that and address that in a big detail. So we will take the Bible account and put it under microscope to examine it, and we'll compare it to other civilizations. So we'll do all of that as we progress.
Doctor, I'm sorry. From
Sure.
what I understand now, that like if it doesn't depend on just a longer period of time, it makes it sound like it's more likely that fossilization would happen in a shorter period than longer, because if it's longer, then the animal or whatever, the body will decay or something will
Yes.
eat it, or like, it won't resist the time if it's just not it's because like to have those circumstances, it makes more sense, or makes it more likely to happen in a shorter time.
Exactly.
Is that right? Or-
Absolutely. Your understanding is absolutely right, David. And that's the geology of the flood, the catastrophic geology that we'll discuss in detail. Yeah.
Because he wants to kill something and bury it very quickly and put pressure on it and have, the minerals that it needs to stay. So it makes more sense, or it would be more likely to happen faster than on, like, because if you leave it millions of years out in the air, it will just decay.
Exactly. If a fish dies in the sea, it doesn't go to the bottom and become fossilized. It floats and then decay and then eaten. So in order to fossilize, it has to be a sudden effect. There are times that they can be separated from oxygen, and under some layers on the earth, they can have that as a slower process. But the quick fossilization is the more acceptable sort of understanding. So let's continue to see this little example before us on the screen. Ichthyosaurus, that's giving birth to his offspring, and this is the arrow here. Giving birth doesn't take millions of years. It is an hours. And then we see on the side fish eating fish. That doesn't take millions of years. And these are real fossils. This is not drawings. These are real fossils that we have reference to. So that shows us an animal in the process of giving birth get fossilized. A fish eating fish get fossilized. So that is really explaining the quick fossilization. So let us follow the life of this little fish. We'll go down in the sea, and two fish are swimming, and then the bigger one eating the younger one, and then amount of mud, and we believe in the flood, came in, and under pressure and minerals and all the other components of this mud, it became fossilized. and that's a fish eating fish. That's a quick process. It is not something that takes millions of years. So this is the real fossil that we were just talking about, and we have these fossils in the Creation Museum in Cincinnati. So let me show you another little video explaining the process of fossilization to just highlight the issue, because I know this is probably new information to so many people, and we need to stress them and then come to the discussion about the different civilization and the dates of recording, and all of that is considered in our study. But let me just stress the fossilization issue, and then we'll address all your questions, Michael.
Dead organisms usually don't last long. Scavengers and bacteria consume them quickly. Soft tissues rarely last more than days or weeks, and hard parts like bones or shells only a month or two. But the rocks of Earth contain billions and billions of fossils, and in many places, millions of fossils are exquisitely preserved, even soft parts. How could this be? To preserve a body, it needs to be put in a safe place. Extremely cold or dry places would protect them, but most organisms don't live in those conditions. There is another solution: rapid burial. If a body is sealed from oxygen and out of reach of burrowing animals, then it has a good chance of fossilizing intact. Rapid burial is uncommon today, but there's much evidence of massive burials in the past. Not only are many fossils well preserved, they're found amidst very fine sediment layers. Fine layers rarely last in the present because all sorts of animals are digging around in the mud and soil, searching for food. In just a few weeks or months, the original layers are destroyed. But in the fossil record, churned up sediments are rare. If these sediments were laid down rapidly, however, they'd prevent burrowers from doing their job. And there are thousands of feet of such layers in the fossil record all over the world. This suggests that moving water laid down mud and sand rapidly over a wide area, and the process lasted several months. A year-long global flood, as described in the Bible, is the best explanation we know for the well-preserved fossils and fine layering throughout the rocks of the Earth.
I think it's very important to understand the different types of understanding geology. Catastrophic geology, as explained by the flood of Noah, which lasted for 371 days and was a catastrophic event all over the world, and we'll prove that as we progress in our discussion. And the uniformitarian type of slow deposition and slow fossilization. Fossilization can happen in very dry land or very cold land, like the poles, where we find some mammoths are really frozen and kept intact because they are separated from oxygen and they can be kept intact. So we have to understand that the geology of the flood is essential to understand how we can explain things in the present.
Both in the video, it was mentioned that there's millions or billions of fossils.
Yes.
So it's not like a few that we are highlighting. There's actually millions and billions.
Exactly.
So how can we explain that if it's like happening over like millions of years, especially that it's in different parts of the Earth? It's not like in really cold areas where
Yes.
it can stay that long.
Yes, exactly. That's why we believe in the flood geology. That's why we believe in the catastrophic, because it's a universal thing. You find billions and billions of fossils, and they are all over the world.
Billions is a big number, so that's why I was like...
It is, and it is a big number, yes. I'll tell you about my visit to the Grand Canyon, and we spent a week rafting on Colorado to see some of the fossils and things, but we'll come to that later. But it's not only the bones and sometimes soft tissues that could be fossilized. Any other thing could be fossilized. So let me just show you on the screen this little hat. This little hat, fossilized, that means it's mineralized. There are minerals that came into the tissue of the hat. This hat was discovered from the Spray mine, where it had been covered with water for over 50 years, the mineralization of the water was to calcify the hat. So this hat fell in a water saturated with lots of minerals and under pressure and temperature got fossilized in 50 years because there was no hats for millions of years. I don't think so in history. So we have a hat which got fossilized, and there are lots of other things really, but I chose only one.
Well, thank you, Doctor. Thank you, Michael, and we'll keep the discussion going. The distance between who I am and who I want to be is separated only by my actions, and my actions depend on what I believe. So ask yourself today, what do you believe? Thank you for watching.